You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Good evening. My name is Peter Basserman, Chairman of the Branford Inland Wetland Commission. It is now, by my clock, 7 o'clock. We have a quorum of commissioners this evening. I guess at this point in time, we should note that we are still under Executive Order 7D in terms of tonight's meeting as a virtual. Information regarding tonight's meeting, including the agenda, has been posted on the website. BCTV is recording this evening. We were reminded that when we're not speaking, please mute your microphone so that there is no feedback. It comes out in the recordings, which the public can view. So it would be helpful if we can mute the microphone accordingly. Let's see, again, as I say, the agenda has been posted on the website. We have a full agenda this evening. Let's see, we need to do a roll call at this point in time. Why don't we go around the horn and commissioners, please indicate your presence. Clarice, you want to start?
Sure. Clarice Begamon, Commissioner, present.
Commissioner Rose, present.
Commissioner Boda, present.
Commissioner Basserman, present. Is there anybody that we missed?
Commissioner Grenwald's present.
Okay, I don't see you on my iPad. I'm switching to computer, but okay, we duly noted that Commissioner Grenwald is present. All commissioners present are seated. And we also have, let's see, some other parties on the call this evening. Can you introduce yourself on the call, please? Maybe we start with you, John.
John Proto, Shoreline Trolley Museum.
Next up.
Kimberly Lombard, RHP Properties.
And Preddy, Briscoe Engineering.
Rob Sonicson. I'm with Kimberly Lombard.
Is that everybody? Thank you. All right, first up, we have a set of minutes to be approved. Actually, 3 sets, February 11th, March 11th, and April 3rd. Start with the February 11th regular meeting minutes that were revised.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. As I remember, there was a incorrect on who seconded a motion, so I went back and fixed that.
And that was the only suggested change?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent, correct.
Commissioner Grenwald, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the February 11th meeting as corrected.
And a second would be?
Commissioner Begamon, second.
Any further discussion on the amended minutes? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? Thank you. Next up, we have the March 11th regular meeting minutes, all 7 pages of them. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, Commissioner Greenwald, I'll make a motion that we approve the regular meeting on March 11, the minutes for that meeting.
Hopefully there's a second.
Commissioner Begamon will second.
Thank you, Commissioner Begeman. Any further discussion on those minutes? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Abstain.
opposed? Any abstain?
One abstention.
Commissioner Rose.
Commissioner Boda.
And Commissioner Rose, did you abstain as well?
Yes.
Okay. Finally, an April 3rd special meeting, the site walk minutes.
Commissioner Greenwald, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the April 3rd special meeting site walk minutes.
That's 3 for 3, Dick. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Rose, second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I abstain.
And I abstain.
Commissioner Boda abstain.
Commissioner Begamon also abstain.
Commissioner Ackerman abstain. Okay. All right, we have next up on the agenda an application for receipt this evening. Inland Wetland 210303, 96, 102, and 104 Stony Creek Road, which is a new single-family home. Is there someone here for the applicant?
There is, Mr. Chairman, Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering, representing Mr. DiMartino, has purchased the 3 properties. Can I share my screen, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, yes. And also, just so that everyone knows, Clarice just entered the meeting. Peter, given the fact that we don't have a full commission, or that there's still space, I'm assuming you want to see Commissioner Kraus.
I'm sorry, I didn't even see Commissioner Kraus on my screen. Yes, please, we're still under the limit, so Commissioner Kraus can be seated.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Jim, are you having, can you share, or do I need to do something else?
No, I think I, hold on. Okay. Can you all see that now? Map on the screen? Okay. So, 96, 102, 104 Stony Creek Road, here along the southerly border of the property. This darker line here that I'm outlining is the outline of the 3 properties. Originally, there were 2 small lots in the front and then kind of a long rectangular lot in the rear. The subdivision originally was done in 1973. And then in 1975, wetlands magically appeared. And the lots have sat unbuilt on from that time. I believe they've been taxed as building lots all that time, but be that as it may, represent the applicant who I've convinced that we can't, basically can't fit 3 septic systems, can't even fit 2 septic systems, I don't believe, on the site. So he's combining all 3, 1 single family home, 1 septic system tucked up here in the corner. There is a wetland in the back here of the 3rd lot, which is 96 actually. And on this side, so the driveway kind of has existed for a very long time. is through here with the culvert through it. The plan does show stockpile topsoil area, a storm storage area with a level spreader for roof and the drainage discharge on the front of the house. So basically on the other side of the kind of ridge that goes through here. We do have a septic tank and a leaching system for the proposed house, which has been approved by East Shore Health Department already at this point. There was, Jamie had emailed me and said that there had been a delineation on this property to the east at some point back in 2005 that indicated there might have been some wetlands in this area of the property. That was not on our report that David Lord had done for us a number of years ago. So I had David go back out and look and check to make sure that we didn't miss anything. And I actually met him on site today. We kind of probed this whole area here and did not find any indication of wetland soils there. And David was kind enough to jump on today. I did see him on here a minute ago. And he could speak to that further if you wish, but we did double check and we did not find any wetland soils in the area of the house here. So that's where we are. It's again, it's just a single family home and a septic system, combining the 3 lots into one.
This is Commissioner Rose. Jim, you're saying that somewhere in history there was wetlands shown in the area of the house, but upon investigation by soil scientists and you, none are found actually?
Correct. There was on this neighboring property, this is just the tail of it. It's actually a very large property. There was, wetlands that all in the back, but in this front area here, there was 4 wetland flags that were shown. And there is a low area there. There gets some runoff from the driveway and it kind of makes its way over here. But we with David probed this whole area and we couldn't find any wetland soils.
Commissioner Basserman, Jamie, do we have a date for that delineation?
The delineation by others was 2005, I believe.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes, this is David Lord, the soil scientist. The previous delineation to mine was done in 2005, and mine was in May of 2006. And as Jim mentioned, we went back out this afternoon, dug about 12 holes all throughout the low-lying area, or I should say the lower-lying area between 2 obviously bedrock-controlled surfaces, and found no indications whatsoever of any high groundwater table condition associated with wetlands. Soils are very strongly brown, no redoxamorphic modeling features. I'm not sure what the reason for a previous indication in that area. The soils are relatively shallow there. They're in the, Holyoke classification, mapped as Cheshire Holyoke, CY in my original report, because there are some areas with deeper soils, but the area of the house and to the rear of the house are either Cheshire soils or Holyoke shallow to bedrock soils.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Jim, does the condition of a no wetland soil change the notion that you can't get more than 1 septic system on the property?
Jim Preddy, no, because our delineation that David had done for us never showed any wetland soils in that area anyway. It was, and I could show you, let's see. I have.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent.
So,
Well, Jim,
go ahead, Jamie.
sorry, I just wanted to clarify that while the delineation from the offsite investigation we're talking about was done in 2015, and the on-site investigation was done in 2005, and the on-site investigation was done in 2006. The 2005 investigation was not received until 2007 after the on-site application had been reviewed. So I just wanted a comparison to be done after both delineations had been received by the office.
So Jim Peretti again. So here's the David Lord's sketch that would accompany his report. Here's the 3 lots that we're now combining. This was the area here where he just mentioned that they are Cheshire and Holyoke soils. On the report that was done by others, there was a sketch that here's the 3 lots here, and there was a couple of flags right here that that were what was in question. And again, we revisited the site today and probed all around, as David had said, and could not find any indication of wetland soils in that area.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Jim, were the flags still there?
No.
Okay.
Not that we could definitively say, no.
Mm-hmm. And Commissioner Bassman, where was the low-level area that you referred to?
Right through here. I could show again on the site plan.
On the site plan, please.
Here it goes kind of right through the house. So because of the ledge, that's kind of both areas. We're putting the house in between the ledge outcroppings to be able to get somewhat of a basement in there, and we're kind of raising the house up because of the ledge and potential groundwater issues. So we're kind of filling in between a little bit there.
Gotcha.
In fact, there was a comment from the town engineer about because of our filling, the possibility of ponding water over here. So I've indicated on here, and I haven't sent this back, this was just today. I have indicated on here that we can add a culvert that go between the 2 lower areas here, just to make sure that anything that's is possibly ponded up here can make its way around the house and back and eventually into this other lower wetland area.
Thank you. So are we in summary?
This is Commissioner Boda. I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Peretti.
Yes.
So it looks like the limit of disturbance is about 30 feet from, can't see what wet flag, maybe wetland flag 30, is that 36? It's tiny.
I can move in.
34.
Or
Is that about 30 feet?
yes, I believe so.
And what is the current degree of clearing on the property now?
The tree, the site is mostly wooded now. Although I will say, when David and I were out there today, the amount of dead and falling trees there are tremendous, actually. There seems to be either some sort of termite or carpenter ant issue, that there's a lot of shredded stumps and down trees and throughout this whole area, actually.
Okay, so the site will need to be cleared. Is there much grading? Is there blasting?
We're trying to do this without any blasting. That's why we've put the house in between the 2 ledge outcroppings, and we're kind of filling up to the house.
So is there an intention, will you be stockpiling anywhere?
They'll have to bring in material here. There won't be material to remove. They'll be bringing it and placing it as they go.
Okay. And then you talked about potential concern about if they have a basement, is there potential for a need for a sump pump that's going to need to discharge?
No, so this, Jim Preddy again, this basement is, just for round numbers, is the footing drain around here will be roughly 37, and this outlet, over here is the lip of this is at 36 with it's a foot deep. So we could get out gravity wise without a pump, which seems to be a driving factor in Branford lately.
Okay. And then what is this? The space behind is not a conservation area or anything like that, is it? I mean, it looks like there was, when you sort of scaled out on the map, it looked like a larger wetland complex.
This here is the edge of what was known as Vilmus Pond.
Mm-hmm.
And this was Marcus property that is quite large, actually. That's what this driveway goes to.
So I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to put some markings at the limit of disturbance, indicating that there shouldn't be clearing beyond that space. We know that creep is particularly common. And I think given that we're looking at 30 feet from the wetland, that would be an important feature to add.
I could definitely say that I could make that call for the owner here. I mean, especially if we're talking about doing it around this side here where the wetland is, then yeah. I mean, if we're, I don't know that I could say that we put them all the whole way here, but along this side, I agree.
Yeah, I think where we're looking at that.
Yes.
The grass storage area, stormwater storage area. Yeah, with the level spreader, I think that would be an appropriate spot. It's close.
Jim Preddy again. I think it's absolutely reasonable. Yes.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I just wanted to add that in addition to the comment regarding the low spot, the town engineer also had a comment suggesting that the grass swale have some plantings due to the soil testing that was done on site and low infiltration levels. Just wanted to make the commission aware of that.
Jim Preddy again. Yeah, so Jamie and I did have a brief conversation about that also today. What we could do is change this just from a grass area to a rain garden. So that would require excavating some of this material out, replacing it with that mix that has some compost in it, and that will actually alleviate some of that infiltration restraints that some of that native soil has there right now. So we'd be willing to change that.
This is could you also?
And then it would include plantings.
Yeah, a planting plan.
Yeah, sorry, Jim Preddy. I didn't mean to interrupt, but if we switch to a rain garden, it would obviously need to include plants. So
then because this is for receipt, right? We're in receipt right now. Yeah. So then for next month, can you have the details on the rain garden and what the plan for excavation, if you're going to put stone underneath or whatever it is you're going to do, as well as any subsequent planting plan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Jim Preddy again. Is there any additional questions for David Lord? Because I'm not going to ask him to come back to the next meeting.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I do have a GIS map with both wetland delineations on it, if that would be helpful for the commission to view to see if you have any further questions before the soil scientist is no longer available.
This is Commissioner Rose. So Jamie, I guess you're going to show us a map. To the extent that wetlands were identified in 2005, and to that extent, our sort of town records indicate the existence of wetlands, which I would assume would be that area to the right of the number 104. Is that the subject area that now turns out not to be wetland?
That's correct.
So, Jamie, in a circumstance like that, do we need to do something officially to rescind a finding that wetlands was there and flagged and somehow correct the record, so that, in the interest of the property owner and the agency's, legitimacy, that we don't just dismiss it because we want to, but rather we quite formally acknowledge that somehow it was done in error in the first place and it's now being corrected?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. The commission has generally done that as part of the application process when a pending application is before them. There is a formal map amendment process, which has not always been utilized in those instances. So a lot of times there's like updates to wetland delineations, minor adjustments based on shifts over time, kind of like we had out at 41 Branford Road. And it doesn't go through the formal map amendment process. So the commission could make a determination to, accept the findings of David Lord's investigation from today or yesterday, I don't remember which day, and or could require a formal map amendment application be submitted. That requires a public hearing process, and I'm not sure. Generally, I'm not sure. This is kind of a unique situation because that wetland area was picked up when this property identified as 108 was being investigated. So it wasn't on the subject property. And I think that in this case, the commission can review the materials and decide which one is one that's appropriate to move forward with. We call our inland wetland layer in our GIS the unofficial wetland layer because a lot of it's not necessarily gone through the formal map amendment process. If we get a new application with a new wetland delineation, we don't make them go through the map amendment process to add that wetland delineation to our GIS. So a lot of towns don't necessarily go through the formal map amendment process that is outlined in the statutes.
But this is Commissioner Rose. The map you're showing us is an official GIS map reflecting wetlands as identified in 2005 in that area, correct?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. This is the town GIS, and what we call the layer is the unofficial wetland boundaries. That often gets cut off once it gets out to the public reader, because we say unofficial wetland boundaries and then our GIS servicer just says wetland boundaries because it's shorter and it fits better in a legend. But it is an unofficial map. There's a lot of delineations in here that have not gone through the official, neither the 2006 nor the 2005 wetland delineation went through the formal map amendment process. So.
Well, at the end of the day, I'm raising the question only in the interest of the property owner and the agency, just wondering if you're saying it's never been officially established, then I guess it doesn't need to be officially unestablished.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I think the commission should make a clear determination regarding the wetland delineation for the property and what's currently the accepted wetland delineation. And certainly the commission may always require an updated wetland delineation for a future project because wetlands can change based off of surrounding development and changes in properties. But I don't know that it would follow recent past practice to require a map amendment for that to occur.
It's Commissioner Begemont, just a question about wetlands, because obviously soils can become wetter or drier. But I thought with Connecticut's classification, whatever they are, I don't remember the terms. And these types of soils that have been identified, why would a wetland in 10 years without, the soil types wouldn't change. They might be wetter or drier.
Jamie Frederick, in the wetland agent. If I'll let David Lord speak to this as well afterwards if he has more to add. I think in this instance, both investigations were done within a year, initially 2005 and 2006, and it could be, like I was saying, the this delineation in the southwest side of the site was picked up when this property 108 was being investigated. So it could be that it was picked up in the wrong spot, or it could be that any number of things. It is based on soil type, and for it to have changed in this particular kind of instance doesn't seem terribly striking. But to what I was speaking to before, oftentimes the edge of wetlands will kind of flux over time, and new wetland areas can be formed. Wetland areas generally don't disappear unless there's been filling or a change in the direction of water flowing to that area. But certainly David Lord is the professional that can also speak to that in this instance in particular.
This is David Lord. The 2005 delineation was done in November. It's possible that there was some surface water sitting in what is, as Jim Preddy mentioned, a very disturbed from tree blown down pockets of where the root systems are up ended. Shallow depressional areas are left behind. Those areas might have been having standing water sitting in them because of the time of the year. But certainly the soil colors, which I have found, have not changed in a matter of 15 to 16 years. The colors would not have changed. This area possibly was identified based on some observed surface water. It's also strange to show a wetland which is open-ended in the direction that it is. It looks like this was done primarily for lot 108, identified something along the boundary with 104 and just extended the lines into 104. I'm just supposing some reasons why it would have been identified on the landscape where it is under the soil conditions which I've seen. You really have to stretch to figure out what would have created the need to identify that area back in 2004. As I said, we did 12 holes out there today, and down to depths in excess of 24 inches, you have very bright brown, reddish brown soils with no connection to the water table. That's all I have to. I'll be happy to try to answer additional questions that the members may have.
So this is Commissioner Boda. What I'm hearing is the possibilities are generally speculation from experience. That one possibility is a clerical error. One possibility is someone saw hydrology and identified it that way. But really our task is to determine if we can use David Lord's current soil assessment, which I would be comfortable doing. I agree the shape of the wetland is also very bizarre. So I'm wondering if one of those two reasons, maybe a combination of the two. So I would be comfortable using David Lord's soil soil report with the current soil identification.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. We've not received an updated letter regarding the recent investigation confirming the findings from 2005. Would the commission want that for the file to confirm that a recent investigation was conducted to particularly assess that area and confirm that it was not wetlands?
This is Commissioner Bassman. I think given your comments about affirming on the record the nature of the soil condition, et cetera, I think given the fact that this was just an application for receipt tonight, to include that on next month's discussion would be appropriate. Any further comments from the commission? Thank you, David Lord, for joining us and helping us understand the nature of this changing wetland condition.
You're welcome. Pleasure.
Next up, we have an application for review, Inland Wetland 210302, 37 Bourbon Drive, construction of a new single-family home. Jamie, can you tee this up for us?
Sorry, Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. I was distracted because there was a message in the chat. What were you asking?
37 Bourbon Drive. Can you frame this for us? What's the review?
Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. Are you looking at the latest agenda filed?
Oh,
I think
I have 4.6.
should be a newer one, 4.8.
4.8.
Or 4.7, I'm sorry, 4.7.
All right, did I miss something then? Put that agenda on the screen, please. This is Commissioner Basserman. Abby, did you send out a 4.8 yesterday?
It was sent out yesterday afternoon. I think around like 4:15 or so.
Hey, hang on. Okay. I'm sorry, I missed a couple here. So if I can read this on my phone. Next up, under applications for receipt, Inland Wetland 210401, 4652 and 4555 Alex Warfield Road, the installation of freestanding bathroom building and associated utility work.
Yes.
Is there someone for the applicant on the call?
Yes, Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering, representing Shoreline Trolley Museum. Jamie, if I could share the screen, I will just give a quick, I know this is just for receipt, so I'll be brief in case anyone wants to go out and take a look.
Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent, you should still have permission to share.
No, it says I cannot while you are.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, this is Doug Bono. Jamie, are you there?
Hey, Doug, this is Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. Can you keep your line muted until something an agenda item comes up that's relevant?
Okay, I'm not supposed to talk about 37 Bourbon.
Wait until that comes up on the agenda, okay?
Oh, I thought it came up. Oh,
nope.
Okay.
Sorry, there was a bit of a confusion with an older agenda item. That's going to be later in the meeting.
All right, that's no problem.
Jim Preddy again. This is the 46 to 52 piece of the Branford Electric Railway Association property. This is 45 to 55, which is a very, very large property. It's 20 something acres, mostly a lot of marshland. But in any event, a number of years ago, we put these buildings up for the Charlie Museum to store. This is kind of high ground over here to store rail cars inside. They are now trying to get fire service into these buildings to protect them. They are going through a number of channels to fund that and get permission for that. But the end result is we need to come kind of across this other lot from Dominican Road, which is over here. They have got an agreement to do an easement with these folks here. That is at 101. We're coming through across the field and then into the yard, going to provide 2 freestanding little bathroom buildings. One is here, one is here. So there will be a fire and domestic service that comes from the road. And then the 2 bathrooms would actually gravity drain down into a pump station, and there would be a force main that in the same trench that goes back out to the sewer in Dominican Road. So the majority of the work here is utility trenching, with the exception of the 2 bathrooms that are actually elevated because of the flood zone. So they're going to be built on piers, kind of thing. And that's basically the point of the whole project, is to get the fire, water, domestic water, and sewer services into the yard from Dominican Road.
This is Commissioner Bassman and Mr. Preddy. The distance between those 2 bathroom structures and the wetland?
So here you can see this dotted line is the 100-year, the 100-foot flood zone. So the bathroom and the pump station's out of it here, and we're out of it over here as well. It's just that some of this trenching gets a little bit close over here to this, but because of the elevations of the path that we took, we had to take them. So.
Thank you.
Plus, there are some other buildings here. This is other high ground here, and if they ever need to put another like storage area or anything, this is basically the only kind of high spot that they could do it in. So we're trying to leave that as it is for now, so they have that option in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. So this application was received towards the end of the day yesterday. I haven't had much time to look at it yet. However, I was wondering, was a wetland investigation done on the property west of the access? Because we have some wetland delineations shown in our GIS that I don't think were shown on the map again.
To the west, over here?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I believe kind of where the call out for install silt fence is. South, yeah, where your cursor is. I think in that area there might have been some, and then I think probably further west, north, probably off-site of the area shown, but I'm not entirely sure. I just wanted to bring that to your attention to make sure that if there is something, it can get resolved before the next meeting.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we'd have to have someone go back out. So we had this flag just recently, or within the last 6 months. So what you're looking at must be much older than that.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Yeah, I haven't had time to look in our files, but I can share with you what I'm talking about before the next meeting.
That's fine. If you could send it to me, and then I'll either add it to the plan or have someone go look at it.
Any other questions for Mr. Preddy?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Boda. So that pinch point earlier on with the trenching, how close is that to the wetland?
In this area here, is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
We're about 25 feet right there. This is a pretty large scale map.
How wide is the trench?
The trench will only be about 6 feet wide or so. Won't be very big because they have to fit all that in a 10-foot easement here. So they're going to have the how do I explain it? The trench will be stepped so that the sewer is below the water, so that they could actually, it only needs to be 3 feet apart. So to minimize disturbance and fit it in the area that we have to work with, the trench will only be maybe 6 or 7 feet wide.
Okay, so this is Commissioner Boda. I'm wondering, are there existing plantings that are right adjacent to in between the trench and the wetland that are in need of either specific protection beyond the silt fence, hay bale, or will need replanting afterward, and or yes. It's just you're close. It's very close.
Yeah, I agree. Jim Preddy again. So I remember it being grass for I thought the whole way, but it was at the end of it was right before we had snow, so everything was kind of dead. So what I can do is go out and take pictures, and if so be it, if we need to add some protection there or replant stuff, we'll at least have a better idea what that is.
If the applicant would be amenable, I think that would be because will the line need to be maintained then?
No, once it's in, it should, if it gets put in right, it should never need to get dug up again.
So that seems like a good spot to put some additional plantings right along the edge there while there's work being done, and as a form of mitigation.
John Proto from the Shoreline Trolley Museum. If I could just add, we were here about, I would say 3 years ago to handle some infractions that were done by the previous owners. And at the time, we also wanted to remove invasive species. That's been done. What has not been done yet is we were going to do a native species meadow. We haven't gotten to that point yet. And we're sort of waiting for this to be finished. So there really is nothing, there's nothing native there. In fact, there are probably some trees that still need to be taken down.
This is Commissioner Boda. Are you talking about trees adjacent to the wetland there, or generally on the property?
Adjacent to the wetland.
Are there shade trees adjacent to the wetland that would need to be taken down for this application?
Jim Predigan, I think what Bob was referring to is that there was non-native trees and other vegetation that were supposed to be removed, and they've done some of it, and there may be some more that need to come out. I think that's what he was.
I understand. What I'm asking though is what's not reflected right now in the plan that I see in front of me is if there are trees that are providing shade to that wetland and providing an important function in terms of temperature control that would need to be removed in order to put this line in. Because if that is the case, then there would need to be something that would return the function of the shade that would be removed. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. Jim Preddy again. So we had done this survey a while back, and in the route kind of grew into this location more recently than that. I think what I should probably do is have my survey crew out there and set a couple stakes at these angle points so that we could kind of visualize the path, and then I could answer that question definitively, yes or no.
Okay. So, all right. So this Commissioner Boda, so there's a couple of things, right? So it would be some kind of planting plan slash erosion sediment control particular for that spot to just ensure that there's really no movement. And also an evaluation of if there is currently shade provided from trees or shrub to the wetland that you're looking to be removed that would then need to be mitigated in some way.
This is Commissioner Besserman. Just for clarification, I assess at this point that on the plan that we see in front of us, there is no plan to remove shade trees.
It doesn't appear that way, right? This is Commissioner Boda, but
is that correct, Mr. Preddy?
There's definitely no plan to remove any significant trees, no.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Boda. I would just like some confirmation because my question initially wasn't about trees, but the something that the property owner indicated to me that there could potentially be. And so I think that we just want to make sure that we're not removing a function as part of this application.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I did notice that there was a permit issued in, I believe, 2019 for some corrective invasive management work. So I think it might be good before the next meeting for staff to arrange a meeting with the property owner to kind of go over where that project stands and also to review the area where the utility work is proposed. So that way we can kind of get a better feel for what's going on.
Jim Reddy again. So yeah, Jamie, I will arrange to have some stakes set and then you and I could coordinate a meeting out there.
Sounds good.
Jim Reddy, this is Commissioner, but I have just one more quick question. The soil that will be removed for the trenching, is that going to be taken off site as it goes? Is it going to be stockpiled? Is this a day job?
It will get, Jim Preddy again, it will get piled up on I guess that's the west side of that trench, and then mostly put back in the same trench. Now, there obviously will be some displacement because of the pipe and the sand bedding, so there will be some soil that will need to be removed from the site, but the majority of it will go back in the hole.
All right. Would you just mark on this is Commissioner Boda, mark on the map where the stockpile would be placed?
Yeah, well, generally, when they do trenching like this, they would kind of pile it as they go, so they could put it right back in, and then they'll need to come back later and take any excess away.
So is that something that happens in a day or two?
This is probably only a couple days getting the pipe from one end to the other. All the work is really at the ends, the connections. But this is probably only a few days at most. 3 or 4, maybe 3 days, I would guess.
Also, Commissioner Boda, when we do trench, they're going to pile everything on what would be the opposite side from the trench from wetlands. So the trench is between the fill that came out of the trench and the wetland. So the trench itself becomes a barrier to protect the wetland from the fill, and after they place their pipe and their sand bedding and whatever, they'll backfill and they'll just end up removing whatever doesn't fit into the trench at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on 210401? Okay. Lastly, under the application for receipt is Commissioner Basserman is Inland Wetland 210402, 8 Holly Lane, septic repair, single family home.
Jim Preddy again, Crisco Engineering. You're not done with me yet. So this is just a septic repair for an existing house that's been there many years. It's in an existing lawn area. No trees will be removed. I do have it. here. It's actually in between the existing house and the garage. This is lawn area now. The wetland area is this channel. There's a culvert that comes under the road, and then there's a channel that's actually stone lined for most of this until it gets, I think, back to the stone wall. And then there's mostly pachysandra all along the edge here. So it was obviously maintained by someone very long time ago. The person that owns this house, I believe, only bought it a few years ago, but they are having septic problems. It's not breaking out yet, but they have to get the tank pumped on a regular basis at this point. So these little garden areas that are here are going to come out, and they're going to excavate and put a new system in here and a little filling. That's the whole product. This is under East Shore review right now. We have not received the approval yet.
Mr. Preddy, this is Commissioner Bassman. Is the existing system in that same footprint?
Yes. So what happens right now is that the pipe actually comes out of the back of the house to a septic tank over here, and then the pipe goes under the deck, and then there's trenches that are here, but they're too low. They're in the groundwater table, and that's kind of common for the area. But so this system will need to get raised up, but the material will get taken out, cleans, septic sand will get put in, and then the new system, which will be a couple feet higher than the old system. But we're going to reroute some plumbing inside the building so that the pipe can come right out on this side to a septic tank here instead of going all the way around the building.
Thank you.
So this, sorry, Jim Preddy again. So to answer the next question, this tank will just get filled with sand and left in place and abandoned. We won't dig that up, and we won't need to dig up this pipe under the deck. All the disturbance will really be right in here.
This is Commissioner Boda. Jamie, once they have everything in order with East Shore Health, do you see any reason why we wouldn't do this as an agent approval?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. In the past, the commission has allowed the agent to do septic repairs with the understanding that it's generally work that it's benefited from happening sooner rather than later. I've not been out to the site, and this was just received yesterday, so I haven't had a lot of time to look at it, but it very likely could be. One thing I was wondering about was whether or not the silt fence could be pulled just a little bit further away from the wetland, because it doesn't really look like there's any activity proposed between, I think is that the 12-foot contour and the silt fence? I'm not sure how much grading in there might need to be. And then the other concern I had was the anti-tracking pad is proposed over where the select fill is being placed, so it doesn't, I'm not sure how that would work.
They'll use the tracking pad to get in and take the material out, and then kind of work their way out of the yard. I can meet you out there, but there's plantings around this edge of this driveway, and we were trying to create the least amount of destruction there. There's actually a tree stump on the edge of the road that has to come out right here anyway, so that's why we were showing it here. But it could be moved over. This silt fence could be dragged down a little bit. There is plantings on the edge of the driveway, but we could pull it down a little bit and try to get just out of the system. But again, I can meet you out there. Martha's very nice. I'll call her and tell her we're coming, and you could walk the whole property.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent, the commission would be okay with me doing this administratively if I'm comfortable doing so after the site visit?
Correct.
Commissioner Granold, I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Commissioner Boda, yes, please.
Okay. Now we have an application for review, inland wetland 210302, 37 Bourbon Drive. Construction of a new single-family home.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. Just to kind of recap before handing it over to the applicant. This application was received at the last meeting. The applicant was not present to make an initial presentation. However, the commission did briefly look at the plan and decided to schedule a site walk, which was held this past Saturday. If the commission decides they want to hold a public hearing, tonight is the last meeting to make that decision. there has been public interest, particularly of note. I've heard that from the neighbors on both sides, and I believe that there's a couple people from the public present this evening. In regards to a public hearing, the commission shall not hold a public hearing unless they find that the activity is likely to have a significant impact, a petition is received, or the commission finds that it is in the public's best interest. So if the commission has any questions on any of that, let me know. Otherwise, that's all I have at the moment.
This is Commissioner Basserman, and for the applicant, this is an appropriate time for you to make comments.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Mike Bennett. I'm a professional land surveyor with Bennett and Smilas Associates, 415 Killingworth Road, Higginham, Connecticut. I'm here tonight to make a presentation and to address comments that have been submitted by staff on this application. Robert Russo, the soil scientist, is also here this evening, and at appropriate times, I'm going to ask him to address the soils that he delineated on site and the characteristics of the site itself with respect to vegetation. And he also did some planting plans, and I will also ask him to describe those for the commission. Jamie, you had a presentation plan. Is it possible to put that up?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Yes. Is this the one that you're looking for?
That's the one that I'm looking for. Thank you very much. This, to start off with, this is somewhat a unique site in that this was a existing building lot that was approved in the early 1950s before wetlands regulations were adopted in the town of Branford. After our client purchased the property, they asked us to go in and survey it and prepare a plot plan for the house. When we did that, we obviously had a soil scientist come out and delineate the wetlands and discovered that a large portion of the property contained wetland soil. And I'd like to just give you a general description of the property itself. You see Bourbon Drive on the top of this sketch. That goes from, I'm going to call it west to east, and it slopes downhill from the west to east, east being towards 41 Bourbon Drive. The topography from the road then slopes down to the south, to the back of the property. There's a fairly steep bank along the road and some guide rails at the top of the bank. And as you can see, if you look at this plan, I would say we've got a very, very light greenish or yellow coloring that would indicate what we would do. We would propose as grass area in the future. We have a darker green that would remain as upland areas that are not being disturbed. And then you have a medium green there that shows the limits of wetlands going right up through the center of the property. I would also like to point out that this lot, as my client purchased it, was smaller than what you see now. We were able to, the original lot line essentially would go from the street down through almost the center of the garage to the back of the property in a straight line. We were able to obtain a lot line revision and add more property to this on the east side. And so we acquired land from 41 Bourbon Drive that enabled us to construct the house and not encroach on wetlands at all. And in your packet, there was a plan that showed the original alternative that we looked at with respect to the existing lot, and you would see that there would be consider encroachment into the wetlands for a lot development. What we have in the I would say the northeast corner of the lot, you'll see a driveway coming in. You also see the construction entrance coming in to the front of the house. The proposed house is colored in brown. And then you see the disturbed areas around the house that will be regraded. Because of the slope of the property, the house was designed so that it has a walkout basement. And essentially where the back of the house is, you'll see you'll see the deck and that area that walks out essentially at existing grade to limit the disturbance of the natural soils in the upland area. We will be placing fill along the front of the house to provide a grade for the driveway to come into the garage and the front yard. We also, you can see south of the house and off the deck, we've also proposed a rain garden with a outlet, riprap outlet, which would, once it's full, allow water to run off. That rain garden has been sized to handle the new impervious soils created by the house and the driveway. Jamie prepared a very good report, and I would just like to kind of use her report as an abstract to just go through and review this project in a little more detail and point out some of the features that we've included in this application. And the first thing, I do want to point out that this was an existing lot of record. If we did not do the lot line revision, we would not have been able to put any type of house on here without disturbing wetland soils. The lot line modification allowed us to put the house entirely outside of the wetlands and not disturb wetland soils. If you look at the house adjacent to us on 41, that was built in 1959. The subdivision for these two lots was created prior to that, I believe in 1956 or earlier. We had a site walk this past Saturday where some of the commissioners were able to attend. They made some very astute observations. I'd like to address those as well. But the first thing I'd like to address is where the driveway is connected to Bourbon Drive. That's at the end of a guide rail. At this point, there has been some soil erosion, and the water running in the gutter, instead of continuing in the gutter down the street like it does throughout the site, is running off the road into our site at this point. It was not a prior drainage ditch or anything like that. It's just a matter of soil had eroded away and the water has found a new way to bypass the edge of the road and come down onto this property. The construction of the driveway will eliminate that and prevent some drainage runoff from coming onto the lot that should not have been coming onto the lot. We were out there on Saturday morning. Thursday night, there was a fairly large rainstorm. I believe in the Branford area, you probably got around an inch of rain. And when we walked in from that driveway area, you would have noted that the soils primarily at the base of that hill were spongy and wet. And that is primarily was due to that large rainstorm and the runoff coming off the street. Up the street and down the street from there, that does not happen. The driveway is coming into the front of the house. Again, the house has a full basement in it that walks out to grade in the rear. There will be footing drains around the entire basement, and that will outlet into the rain garden. The roof leaders for the house will also be connected around the building and again outlet into the rain garden. And again, the rain garden was sized to properly handle the impervious surface. We have on the plans a detail of plantings for the rain garden, and also you will see along the edge of the wetlands, you will see some wetlands plantings going up in a northerly direction from adjacent to the rain garden up to approximately the front of the house. I'll ask Bob Russo to talk about those plantings in a couple minutes. We also, at the suggestion of staff, created a conservation easement on the property. That conservation easement encompasses almost all of the wetland area and the dark green area along the western boundary line, that is upland area. And then it goes all the way back to the rear property line. That conservation easement is approximately 27,000 square feet, and the lot is approximately 39,000 square feet. So we're providing a conservation easement that's going to encompass about 70% of this lot. The overflow again, from the rain garden is going to have a riprap outlet. It's going to be essentially over it's going to be 12 inches of riprap on top of woven geotextile fabric to prevent erosion on the bottom. And that area will all be seeded, with a special mix. We did have a detail on the plan that said wetland restoration mix. Was probably a poor choice in the title of that detail, because we're not proposing to disturb any wetlands. And if you read through that soil mix, it deals with the seeding process for the rain garden. And that's what that mix was designed for, the rain garden in the area adjacent to that. The vegetation that we're proposing, the trees along the west side of the disturbed area are placed just outside the edge of the wetlands. The conservation easement, as I said before, encompasses almost all of the wetlands. We created on that line that goes from north to south where those trees are planted. We created a straight line for the edge of the conservation easement, approximately on the wetland line. There is, along that line, there is approximately 100 square feet of wetlands that is outside of that easement line, not because we're intending to disturb it, for ease of description of the easement and everything. We just made a straight line there. If the commission would like to see various angle points in that line to follow the exact wetlands flags, we can also make that modification at your request for approval. We also have placed marker signs along the area where the trees are being planted on the wetlands line. And they all show up on the plan. Just to finish off with respect to the house location, you will see 2 points where that is close to the wetlands. We have 8.3 feet on the south corner of the house and 5.9 feet off the wetlands on the other corner. Those are the closest 2 corners of the house. And I do want to express that we worked diligently to make sure that we didn't disturb any wetlands, although I'm sure this is much closer than the commission or anyone would like to see it. We were able to achieve by the lot line revision and everything else that we did, be able to achieve to keep the house out of the wetlands. We demarked the line adjacent to the house pretty well with plantings and vegetation. At this point, I would like to ask Bob Russo to describe the site itself, how we delineated the wetlands, what he found there. And then when he's through, I will add just a couple more comments. Bob, are you available?
I am. For the record, my name is Bob Russo. I'm a certified soil scientist with CLA Engineers in Norwich, Connecticut. And as Mike Bennett mentioned, I did the wetland delineation on the site. The site plan that you see up on the screen before you shows a peninsula of wetland that narrows as it heads closer to the road. A couple things about the site. The soils in this portion of the site are in dense glacial till. So there is a dense layer, 14, 15, 16 or more inches below the soil surface that is of low permeability. And that's what holds the water table up high enough in parts of the site during the wet season and into the spring that creates a wetland condition, a poorly drained soil that meets the definition of wetland based on the town of Branford regs and the state of Connecticut regs. The wetland on site is a red maple swamp. It has red maple trees. For those of you that have been out there, you've probably, looked into it and seen that there are mature red maple trees in there up to 10, 12, 16 inches diameter. Much of the shrub story in this wetland has multiflora rose and Japanese barberry in it. So it's got a kind of thorny shrub layer. In the herbaceous layer, there's some sensitive fern, some cinnamon fern, and other wetland herbaceous species. At one point, looking at the soil out here, I could see that there was a surface soil horizon and AP horizon. That meant at some point it was actually plowed so that it dried out enough at some point in the summer for farmers to use it as a field historically. Obviously, it hasn't been used in that way in quite some time. So this is a red maple swamp. And as Mike described, this lot came into existence before wetlands regulations were around. We have some of these relics around at times. And so it's an existing lot of record. And as Mike Bennett described, there was some additional land obtained through a boundary line alteration. And the current footprint of the house is maintained outside of the wetland. I'd just like to address a couple points that Mike indicated in terms of vegetation and stormwater on the site. There is a rain garden that's been designed to handle the excess runoff on the site. I prepared a planting plan for that was provided as well. It involves native shrubs and native plants that are recommended by Connecticut DEP for rain gardens, and that's detailed on the site plans. And as well, there's a line of shrubs off of the back of the house that's closest to the inland wetland that are native shrubs that are well suited to that particular type of soil and environment that will provide a little bit of a buffer between the house and the wetland and provide some wildlife habitat benefit as well. That's a brief description of the wetland. Again, the effort was made to not disturb any wetland here and to do some mitigation in the form of plantings and stormwater treatment in order to minimize the potential for any impact on the wetland. I'd like to turn it back over to Mike, and I'd also be happy to answer any questions from the commission as the meeting progresses. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I'd just like to point out a couple other things that I neglected to point out before. If you look at the site plan, essentially in a U shape around the disturbed area, you will see a line of silt fence. It's a straight line with SF in that line. It starts up by the driveway and runs in a U shape down below the rain garden and then back up again on the west side. That was placed there to protect the soils. You also see a stockpile area with silt fence around it up in the northeast corner. And at one point, when we were out on the field walk, there were some concerns by a couple of the commissioner as to whether or not we would have to cut any trees in the wetland area because they were too close to the house. We located what trees we thought were closest to the house, what significant trees, I should say. If you look just a little bit to the west of the line, you'll see a symbol for the trees. It kind of looks like possibly a tree with no leaves on it. I don't know, Jamie. Yeah, you got it, Jamie. Those three in that area are probably 6 to 8 inches in diameter. There's 2 more north of that, up by the end of the shrubs, that are probably, there's one and there's another one. I would say they were 12 to 15 inches deep in diameter, and there's also one down by the edge of the rain garden, contour on the rain garden passes through it. And with respect to those trees, we are not proposing to cut any of them. They are the closest trees of any significant size to the edge of the wetlands, and they vary from the majority of them are 20 or more feet away from the house, some of them 25 and 30 feet. So the closer ones happen to be a little south of the house or downhill from the house. I also reviewed in Jamie's report, they had, she had listed at the bottom of her report possible conditions of consideration. I reviewed those and we have no problem with those being conditions, or obviously the standard conditions that are also included with your approvals. At this point, Bob and I will be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have.
Thank you for the presentation. I think we have in our package of material the soils material, the project narrative, the site plan. I guess where else on the property did you look to adjust the house, if at all? Were there other locations on the property or other layouts on the property of the house that you considered and rejected?
Well, yes, we considered actually, if you look at the house next door at 41 Bourbon, and it's very deceptive looking at it because that's a rectangle, and also the other issue with respect to that house is the garage is in the basement. It's what has a walkout basement. The garage is end-loaded in the basement. We considered a rectangular house similar to that. But when you, first of all, if you take away this front-loaded garage at grade and have to put a garage in the basement like that one on the end, that means the house has to be pushed at least 32 to 35 feet away from the side lot line so that you have room to get a driveway in, and also to make the turn into the garage and back out of the garage. And you'll see next door what a wide area they have there for cars. So if we were to take that and place that on this property, the actual house, once it's moved over so that the edge of the house is 35 feet away from the property line, you would find that the rear corners of the house actually encroach within the wetland area. That will be the southwest corners.
This Commissioner, if you moved it diagonally up toward where that soil deposit area is, does that buy you enough distance to keep it out of the wetlands and actually extend the distance between the wetland and the corners of the house?
Well, the issue with, there's a 40-foot setback distance. If you look at the plan, there's a 40-foot front yard setback. And actually where we've placed our house is the existing house that we're proposing is 1 foot beyond that. So with respect to zoning requirements, we cannot put a house in front of that 40-foot setback line.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Rose. Can you describe again, I don't see the compass anywhere on here. What is north-south?
For my descriptions, one more time. We have north is straight up.
I got it. Okay.
Okay.
So I think you previously described the original, what would be the east property line as about midway into the garage, running parallel with the what is, I guess, the current setback line. Is that accurate?
Yes, that would be accurate. Actually, if you see, we have a dimension, a rear yard dimension that goes from the rear corner of the house out to the property line. If you were to take, Jamie, it's over by where the rain garden is. Okay, you have a 111.6 dimension on that line. Okay,
Yes,
so
yeah.
right. So if again, let me call the side of the house the east side for clarity.
Yep.
If we took that line to the east side of the house and went to the property line, it's actually shown on that other plan before we made the lot line reduction, it would go into the garage and it will probably go through the number 44 in the garage. We have GFE for garage floor elevation at 44.
Yeah.
That property line would have gone through that. That portion of the site, which would have given us no recourse at all, but to disturb wetlands with any type of construction.
Given, if we go back in time prior to the lot line change, it is correct to say that in the context of the presence of wetlands, this isn't a buildable lot. There was no way to build a house on this property, given our wetland regulations and giving zoning requirements. And what you've effectively done is bought sufficient property to have a little bit larger house and to create what is the east side side yard setback. That's what the lot line adjustment enabled. And within that, you're able to fit a house that is almost touching wetland, but in the absence of the lot line change, this property never was buildable. Isn't that accurate?
I would say that it's not totally accurate from the standpoint that this was an approved wetland or an approved building lot prior to the establishment of wetlands.
This is Commissioner Kraus. I have a question. When did your client purchase the property? Was it after the establishment of wetlands guidelines, or have they owned it since the 1950s?
No, it was after they paid.
Okay, so when they bought this lot, they knew that wetlands existed and that wetlands were on this property, because all you need to do is go to town hall and look at the lot and know that this is not a good buildable lot.
So,
I mean, you keep talking about that it was a buildable lot. In 1950, when it was sold, it was a buildable lot. Today, it is not a buildable lot. So if anyone purchased this, once wetlands rules were put into place or wetlands laws, they knew it wasn't a buildable lot. So I get it. I'm sure that the price was very reasonable because it's not really a buildable lot. So they bought it and they took a chance. And then they had to purchase some additional property from the neighbor once they figured out really what they had gotten into. And I was on the site walk. It's very wet. I have to be honest with you. I don't believe anyone is going to put a deck and a rear set of stairs on a property and only use it in the event of a fire emergency as the second egress. I think they're going to put in lawn and a swing set and a whole lot of other things. And we're going to be out there year after year talking about infractions and infringements on the wetlands. And I think that this is something that we have to really start to pay attention to as a commission. This is really not a hardship. If it is a hardship, they should go to planning and zoning and move their house closer to the street. Because if you went to that site walk, you see the convent, which used to be hospice, is infringing on wetlands. This house is infringing on wetlands. The house next door is infringing on wetlands. They're going to be back in front of this commission to make what was once the convent some kind of a huge apartment complex. And we're just going to keep encroaching and encroaching on wetlands that this agency has been charged to protect. So that's my opinion. I feel badly for the person that purchased this lot, but based on the grading of the lot and the work that needs to be done and the wetness that's in that soil, it's just not a buildable lot. And I cannot endorse this.
Mr. Bennett, this is Commissioner Rose again.
Excuse me.
I also, when we talk about this house.
Yeah, this is Doug Bono at 41 Bourbon.
Jamie Frederick, the wetland agent. Before anyone continues, I just want to comment that this certainly is a site with challenges. It's not necessarily a non-buildable lot. The lot was created prior to wetlands. To say they cannot build anything on it would be considered potentially a taking. I think the important things for the commission to consider are the purview is impact to wetlands and watercourses. The commission requires that alternatives be submitted. The one alternative plan that was submitted, I have shown on my screen here, and it was development of the lot prior to the new lot line being revised. So it's the same house, but where the zoning setbacks would have required prior to that lot line revision. I've requested other alternatives that they've considered and rejected as not prudent and or feasible to be submitted, to which they submitted a letter, which I can also share on the screen. And I think to the point of variances are a tool that zoning has in case of properties with hardship. So I think this could be an instance where a variance might be an appropriate tool for a developer to utilize potentially. But I think the commission needs to be careful about saying whether or not this is a buildable lot and speak specifically to the concerns they have relative to the application. The commission, when making their decision, has to make their decision based on activity that will happen and not activity that may happen. So with that in mind.
Jamie, can I say something?
Right now, the commission is making comments. There'll be an opportune time for the public to make comments, the applicant to make comments. But right now, I think we had a couple commissioners that wanted to make comments, and they'd like to entertain those.
Okay, well, this is Doug Bono. I'd like to make some comments when you're ready for me, okay? I'm the owner next door.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rose or Commissioner Boda, you had comment?
Yes, thank you. So a couple of things. This is Commissioner Boda. So first, I was not at the last month's meeting, but when this application was first introduced this evening, I understand that there was a question before the commission about whether this needed to go to public hearing. And I would ask that the commission pause with respect to the details of the site plan for a moment, and putting thoughts out about what the personal thinking on how they might render a decision. And I think that we need to determine if the commission would like to proceed with a public hearing. And if the answer is yes to that, then we have a few things to deal with. If the answer is no to that, then we should continue to talk about the application in front of us. But I do think that we need to address that question first.
Commissioner Grenolch, I totally agree with Commissioner Bottom. I think this is so close to the wetlands, and has the construction would have some probable impact upon the wetlands. And I think that this is projects like this before we have had public hearings. And I think this is right for a public hearing, and we should have a public hearing. And that's what I would recommend to the commission, that we do that and then take all these issues up at the public hearing.
This is Commissioner Bassett, but as staff had indicated at the beginning of this particular area on the agenda, there were three reasons where we could determine that a public hearing was important to entertain. One, which is the significant impact on the wetland and the potential for that, which Commissioner Gordalch just addressed, as well as, I think, Jamie, you indicated that there were public comments on this application already received.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Yes, so the commission has received email correspondence, and I've talked with both neighbors. The agency shall not hold a public hearing on an application unless the agency determines that the proposed activity may have a significant impact on wetlands or watercourses. A petition signed by at least 25 persons who are 18 years of age or older who reside in the municipality in which the regulated activity is proposed, request a hearing, and is filed no later than 14 days after the date of receipt, or the agency finds that the public hearing regarding such application would be in the public interest. So I think the two that could theoretically apply would be either activity may have a significant impact on wetlands or watercourses, or the commission finding that it would be in the public interest.
Commissioner Bassett again, and you indicated that, and maybe just illustrate why we need to make that determination this evening.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Per state statute, the agency must start the public hearing within 65 days of the date of receipt, and then the public hearing also has to be noticed in a certain time frame. So to have that public hearing open within the statutory time frame, the commission would need to make that decision tonight.
Commissioner Bassett again, is there any commission that feels that a public hearing would not be appropriate for this application? Okay. Do we need a roll call vote for that, Jamie, or is sufficient to get general agreement?
This is Commissioner Boda. I'm sorry. I think that we would need a vote, and I would just think that someone should make a motion specifying the reasons for which we are calling the public hearing. And then I think that there's an additional conversation I'd like to suggest following that.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I think that the motion should also include the date, and the next regularly scheduled meeting is May 13th.
So this is Commissioner Boda. My understanding was the rationale for the public hearing was the likely significant impact to the wetland during the construction process, as well as the public interest in that we've had requests for input from the public. Those are the two reasons. Or do I make fun?
Commissioner Granholz, I agree with specifically the first reason, but also the second one would be appropriate also.
Okay, hold on. I need a second.
Is there a second on that motion?
I didn't make a motion yet. Yeah, sorry. I'm just looking for, okay, I got it. Okay, so I will make a motion that the commission hold a public hearing for inland wetland 21.03.02 37 Urban Drive under section 9.1 of the Branford regulations, and that the commission is holding the public hearing first due to the likely impact to wetlands during the construction process, as well as public interest that has been expressed to the Wetlands Office, and that the date for the hearing be set to begin May 13th of 2021.
Commissioner Granholz, I second the motion.
Any further discussion? And we're going to take a roll call vote on this motion. Commissioner Begeman?
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Boda?
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Rose?
Commissioner Rose, aye.
Commissioner Granholz?
Commissioner Granholz, aye.
Commissioner Kraus?
Aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye.
Okay, Commissioner Boda, then
no comment.
Sorry.
You said after the vote you had an additional.
Yeah, I have an additional. So then one additional item that I would put before the commission is that traditionally when we've had these kind of applications, we've sought peer review in order to ensure that the commission meets its legal obligations with respect to using language such as we know specifically what the impacts are and how they can best be mitigated.
I guess that would also include then the ability to review the requested material from staff regarding feed and improvement alternatives.
Yes.
Jamie Frederick.
How do we need to? I guess we need to move that forward this evening.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Yeah, I think if the commission wants a peer review time-wise, it would make sense to make that decision this evening. And the commission would need to determine what type of professional they're looking to have do the review. Are you looking to have a wetland scientist review, project engineer? And what is it that you're looking to have them review? You're looking to have them review drainage? Are you looking to have them review limits of disturbance, impacts to wetlands, those kind of things? And then generally what we do is we send it out and receive proposals that the commission then reviews and votes on, but prior to.
This is Commissioner Rose. I think, given the fact that the proposed house is entirely upland of wetland and entirely in the upland review area, both a soil scientist and civil engineer should be part of the peer review so we can talk about the impact on the wetland itself from the construction and existence of the house once completed, but also how water is going to be managed and how that discharge from the proposed rain garden could impact the neighboring property, because there also is down gradient from that discharge into the pond. So I think there's important issues that relate to both civil engineering and soil science that should be part of peer review.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Commissioner Rose, will the civil engineer also be able to talk about the construction process and maybe variations in that construction process to address protection of the wetlands?
I certainly think that's well within their professional purview, and they commonly weigh in on those things and design for those things on projects, and it would be appropriate for them here.
Commissioner Granolch, I agree with Commissioner Rose. The biggest concern I have is the effect of the construction upon the wetlands. It's so close, it's downslope, there's so many things that could go wrong and really disturb the wetlands. And how they can build it that close to the wetlands without disturbing it is an appropriate question to be raised by a peer reviewer, and maybe some recommendations as to how to make it work. I don't, but that would be my thoughts.
Commissioner Basserman, so then it sounds like we have an agreement on at least going forward with some expertise in the area of civil engineering as well as soils assessment. Our normal process is what, to issue an RFP at some subsequent quick point after this meeting?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent, correct. So staff would send out an RFP based off of the commission's decision, what they're looking for in a peer review. Usually we give them a period of time. I think it's generally 2 weeks to respond, and then schedule a special meeting for the selection. And then they still need an additional time frame to do the work.
Yeah, that's Commissioner, that's my concern. We got, 4 weeks here to issue an RFP, get a response, evaluate, and then are we within reason in terms of a time frame?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I don't know that the commission could necessarily count on getting the report prior to the May meeting. We could certainly try, but I don't, it would depend on the availability of, whoever is selected to get out there and do the report. It's really tight. I wouldn't count on it.
And then this is Commissioner Bassman again, statutorily wise and all that. If we can't get it done by May, what is our date that we need to be concerned about?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. So once the commission opens the public hearing, the Inland Agency must complete the hearing within 35 days. So that would give you to the June meeting to keep the public hearing open, so you could have their feedback at the June meeting. And then the Inland Wetlands Agency must take action on the application within 35 days of completing the hearing. And then there are extensions that can be granted by the applicant. There may or may not be extensions per executive order. I'm not sure if those will continue past mid-April.
So this is Commissioner Boda. Would it make sense to make a separate motion to move that public hearing to the 4th week in May instead of the 2nd week in May, to give the potential peer reviewer those additional 2 weeks before we actually start the public hearing?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. If the applicant is willing to grant an extension of the time frame to open the public hearing, then the commission could look to do that. Generally, we like to see those in writing before locking into that.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Bennett, Bennett and Smiles Associates, we would be willing to give you an extension with respect to opening the public hearing. I can provide a letter in writing to Jamie tomorrow. The other thing, we will also need time to review the comments of the peer review prior to the meeting. It's not something that we would expect to get a day or two before the meeting and be able to address those conditions. So the timing would also help us.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. With that in mind, would it make more sense to wait to open the public hearing until the June 10th meeting?
Commissioner Granholz, I think that's probably the way we should go. Because, well, I think that's, that gives everybody time to put all of it together and have a, responsible hearing with all of the facts on the table rather than only get half of them.
So do we want to amend the motion then?
Yeah, I think it would be a new motion, yes?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, yeah, at this point, it would be a new motion. And then we'd also have to set a special meeting to review the responses from the RFP. Do we want to aim? I'm just thinking we want to probably give them at least 2 weeks to respond, and we're not going to get it out today, so I don't know that the 22nd is the best option, but maybe April 29th, which would then give them still
a couple weeks,
2 to 2.5 weeks, and then the applicant 2 to 2.5 weeks to respond.
Sounds reasonable to me.
This is Commissioner Boda. The whole motion again, or can I just make a motion to adjust the date for the public hearing?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I think you can make a motion to adjust.
Sweet. Good. Thank you. That was the right answer. Okay. So this is Commissioner Boda. Based on the conversation with the commission, the applicant, town staff, I'd like to make a motion that we move the opening of the public hearing for Inland Wetland 21.03.02 37 Bourbon Drive to Thursday, June 10th, 2021, instead of May 13, 2021.
Perfect.
I'll second that motion.
I second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any?
Jamie, did you want a roll call? I saw your face.
Ideally, but is it unanimous?
I believe it's unanimous.
Good.
Thank you. I think that was a good discussion. I guess the opportunity now exists for the applicant to make comment.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. If the commission's looking for a peer review, can we run through what it is the commission's looking to have reviewed? So it sounds like you're looking for both a civil engineer and a soil scientist. You want, I'm assuming, sounds like review of the prudent and feasible alternatives, review of sediment and erosion control measures,
construction activities,
wetland impacts.
Sorry. This is Commissioner Rose. I was going to say visually the upland area is as heavily wooded as the wetland itself. And the impact of the clearing of that entire upland area on the adjacent wetland is of particular interest.
And this is Commissioner Boda. I think wetland impacts both short and long term. And I don't know if this is already included based on the conversation, but any of the hydrology that was assumed in the plan.
Okay. Is the applicant still desiring to make a comment?
At this point, I believe I'm all set with remaining comments. I will save those until we get the peer review results and then move forward at that time.
Okay. Jamie, given the fact that we have decided on a public hearing, would it be inappropriate to take any additional comments this evening?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I think it's up to you whether you want to take any public comment at this time. There will be public availability for public comment at the public hearing, which is where any substantial comments should be made. Right. So I think any comments from the public tonight should be kind of focused on the process, but they can also call our office and talk with me at any time, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Bassman. That's my concern. I think the more we contain this to within the context of the hearing itself, I think the better off we all are.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent, absolutely, because the commission makes their decision based off of the information
right
from the public hearing.
Right.
So to recap, we're looking to select at a special meeting April 29th. Is there a particular date that the commission wants to have the proposal sent out for review prior to that time frame? Would the Monday or Tuesday beforehand be sufficient?
Commissioner Bassman,
I think what we need is make sure that we have them back by the 29th of April. That's the target date.
Well, this is Commissioner, but I think if Jamie was asking how many days ahead we'd like to see them so that we can review them prior to discussing it.
Hi, Doug Bono here. Can I speak the owner next door?
I just indicated that we're going to take comments from the public at the public hearing.
Oh,
so that the commission can understand and have a full record at its disposal when it makes its decision.
Oh, so I can't say anything to defend my house.
So, Mr. Bono,
go ahead,
yeah.
Mr. Bono.
Mr. Bono, so at this point, because the commission has ruled that there needs to be a public hearing, the commission can only consider information that it acquires during the course of the public hearing. And so anything that you say this evening, we will not be able to take into consideration. So if you would like your comments to be considered, you should hold them until the public hearing.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent, and that will be June 10th at the regular meeting, which starts at 7 p.m.
Okay, I guess this is Doug Bono. I guess that's the way you operate. That's fine, But you've talked tonight about protecting the wetlands and everything, but you've said really nothing about protecting my house from water. But anyway, I guess I'll have to express my opinion at the hearing, and that's the way it's got to be. I guess.
Welcome those comments.
Yeah, okay, thank you. But, nothing was said to protect the water from coming in my basement from this new construction. It seems to protect the wetlands, but not a human being. But that's fine. I will express my opinion on the hearing, and I guess, thank you.
You're welcome. We did indicate that we needed some expert opinion from a civil engineer and a soil scientist so that we can determine what the hydrology effects of this project are going to be, not only on this particular house, but on the surrounding territory. So I think your concerns are going to be considered, and we welcome your comments at the June 10th meeting.
Okay, yeah, thank you. But thank you for that. Because to have the rain garden 7 3/4 feet from my back deck really doesn't make any sense to bring all the water from the new construction into my backyard, basically. Rain garden or no rain garden.
Thank you.
But okay, I will
I'm
talk
sure you'll
about that
mention
at
it on
the
the
hearing.
10th. All right,
Okay, thank you. I'll talk about that at the hearing.
you got it. Okay, next up, we have some enforcement activity. Oh, yes.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Sorry, I feel like we were finishing something up, and I just want to make sure that we
Oh, yeah,
got
right.
there. I don't remember what we were talking about.
I think it was a couple days, maybe ahead of the meeting.
Oh,
Get the materials so that we can review it prior to that meeting.
Maybe the Tuesday is probably good.
Yeah.
This is Commissioner Boda. I think it's fine.
Is that everything that you need, Jamie?
I believe Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. When do you want their review to be submitted? Whoever you select, when do you want to have them submit the review by? So if you're selecting on the 29th, we should be able to let them know on April 30th. Do you want to give them 2 weeks, or say we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 weeks? So you give them 2.5 weeks and split the difference, or you just give them. I mean, it's
getting tight.
Let's give them 2 weeks, so that way there's plenty of time for them to
review
do the review, submit it to the applicant, and then for the applicant to submit the materials 5 days before the public hearing, because there's a requirement that all revised materials be submitted 5 days before the public hearing. All right, so I'll put May 14th for the submission.
And just, this is Commissioner Boda, just to reiterate that for Mr. Bennett, just that last part about the 5 days before the public hearing, it's really super important to follow that protocol for the commission, but also specifically for the public.
And Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, I just have like this rough checklist that we've not really formalized yet for third-party reviews, but I'm assuming the commission wants the peer review to attend the meeting to make a presentation of their findings. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's pretty typical.
And be available to answer questions.
And then another question is, does the commission want to build in to the request for proposals that a value for a follow-up review if needed, so that way you don't have to go back to the table and approve additional funds should it be needed, and because whatever's not used would be returned to the applicant afterwards. So if more money is submitted than is needed, it would be returned rather than having to do another special meeting if a second review is required.
Yes.
Sounds good. Okay.
Jamie and Abby, maybe we just, along with our kind of boilerplate for decision, maybe we start to build a checklist for soliciting peer review.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent noted. We do have a draft one. We can bring it up for review with the commission.
Okay, thank you.
Ready for item 4? We have enforcements. These are correct. 2012-02, 10 Kenyon Street, clearing and earthwork within inland wetland upland review area and possibly within the wetland area without an inland wetland permit. Jamie, the floor is yours.
All right, Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. The owner has been very cooperative, has had a wetland scientist go out, confirmed that there's no, majority of the activity was outside of the wetland. And they have come up with a revised planting plan based on the last discussion, or a revised mitigation plan that includes planting based on the discussion at the last meeting where the commission discussed this. Let's see. I'm going to pull that up for review. I believe I saw the property owners here. I'm not sure if the soil scientist was able to join us as well or not.
Jamie, I'm here. Rich Snarski.
Hi, Richard. Not sure what happened to my participants window.
I'm here, Jamie. I just can't get the camera to turn on. Paul Riccio, homeowner.
Hi, Paul. All right, I think I'm almost there getting the plan pulled up. I'm sorry. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
So Jamie Frederick, and the wetland agent, at the last meeting, the commission decided that the applicant could have the soil scientist sketch the plan on an existing survey that the property owner had. So this is the sketch of the wetland location, which are the line with the triangles numbered 1 through 9. And then I believe if the sediment fence is the line with the perpendicular crossings. The slope area that was created on site is kind of demarked by the double blue line. And then there's the 4 dots with the diameters are the trees that are remaining that were slightly buried. And I had asked them to investigate whether the material needed to be removed or if they were planning to remove the trees. It is the property owner's intent to remove the trees because they're not doing well. The kind of crosshair and open circle dots are some of the proposed shrub plantings. And then below the site plan, wetland plantings to be installed in wetland. There are plugs that are proposed to go within the disturbed wetland area where the owner was removing some junk and debris that had been located on the site. So the soil scientist is present to go in more in depth. If the commission has any questions regarding the cease and correct conditions, then I'm happy to answer.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Jamie, do we know when the work is to be completed by?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. I'm not sure if it says on here, but the applicant had also submitted originally a narrative type, and they're looking to have the work done, at least the stabilization of the upland area above the silt fence in April, and then I believe the planting's either late April, early May.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Bassman. Jamie, in your mind, does this recover as best we can the damage?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. I think that it's a thought through plan that addresses the areas that have been disturbed and the concerns that were raised at the last meeting. I think it won't restore the site to pre-existing conditions, but I think it does a good job of mitigating the activity that occurred.
This is Commissioner Rose. Jamie, it also shows that the limit of the filling that occurred is quite a ways away from the wetland in terms of the scale of the property overall, right?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. So the grading activity occurred pretty much up to the base of where the silt fence is. Oh, okay. This is demarking the top of the slope. Oh. So the flat portion of the site is westward of that line, and then it kind of slopes down to this point, and then becomes kind of the original grade around that point as well.
My mistake. It's right up to the wetland. Okay.
So the one comment I had is number 6. It says a monitoring report will be sent to the Branford Wetland Commission in the fall. The report will discuss the survival rate of the wetland plants and will make recommendations for any remedial measures needed, if any. Photographs will be included in the report. Typically, the commission likes to at least see a couple of growing seasons, so I didn't know if the commission wanted to specify a longer period for the monitoring. Usually the commission...
I guess to that point, if we're taking down those trees between the top of the slope and the cross-hatched line, are we replacing those, and are they performing a function to keep out invasive to which we're now exposed? What's the thinking there?
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. I'll ask the applicant soil scientist to speak to that.
Rich Snarski. The trees are on their way out. They're ash trees mostly, and all around them is bare soil. I was planting shrubs, native wildlife bearing, berry producing shrubs along the wetland boundary. But the area there on the slope from the double line down to the wetland boundary will be planted with the New England erosion control wetland mix, which has some native forbs in it. So it won't be a mowed lawn, in other words. It will be producing a lot of the native forbs. So it wouldn't be just a grass lawn with cold season grass species.
I guess the follow-up question are the trees that are there now designated with the different diameters, are they not performing any shade function?
3 of them are dead. The 19-inch one didn't look good. I didn't see it during the growing season. Just been out there during the winter time, but you can see that it's not in good shape, and the applicant does want to remove them.
Thank you.
A different question. How are you, Richard? Good. So the activity by the owner in this case is what killed the 4 trees. If you take away the fact that the 4 trees are now dead or dying, when they were healthy and thriving, did they perform a function relative to the wetland, or is their loss immaterial?
I can't answer that. I got involved in this project in the wintertime. The depth of fill at the 19-inch tree, it was, I believe, I dug a hole there, and I think there was 29 inches of fill where the 19-inch tree is.
This is Commissioner Rose again. So the proposed plantings are all low shrubs and low to the ground coverage?
Yeah, the shrubs are along the wetland boundary that shows X's there. And then within the wetland itself, there's over 300 wetland plugs that'll be planted. The average spacing will be about 1.5 feet apart.
Okay.
Commissioner Bassman, Jamie, you raised the question about monitoring timeframe. What did the existing timeframe call for on the proposal?
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. I believe it makes reference to the fall. So it would be 1 growing season.
Yeah, and our standard is 3, is it not?
The commission, Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, the commission, I think, has had a past practice of anywhere from 2 to 5, depending on the situation.
I don't know. But I guess my feeling is it certainly should be longer than 1 season, and 5 may be too long. So, 3 seems to be reasonable.
And this is Commissioner Boda. I also would just add that typically for those, we've looked for an 85% survivability. And I don't think that was mentioned in this plan. So it would be good to add that.
Any other comments from the commission? Do we confirm today's discussion in a letter back to the to 10 Kenyon Street, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, yes. So I think it would be a good practice for the commission to make a motion whether to accept this planting plan or this mitigation plan as a resolution to the cease and correct order with the amendments that were mentioned, which would be 3 growing seasons worth of monitoring with 85% survival reported in each year of monitoring. And then that way the property owner knows what he needs to do to resolve the cease and correct order. And we'll follow up with a letter confirming that.
Mr. Rose, and the cease and correct stays in force until the end of the last growing season?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, correct. The cease and correct order has not been filed on the land records because the property owner has been very responsive. So it would continue to remain not filed on the land records. However, it would be something that the current property owner and or any future property owners would need to follow up on to get the cease and correct order resolved.
This is Commissioner Boda. So you're looking for a motion now to move on to the next item?
Jamie Fred.
We need to conclude this item.
In the wetland agent, I'm looking for a motion to confirm whether or not this monitoring or this mitigation plan satisfies the cease and correct order with the 3 growing seasons worth of monitoring with 85% survivability.
Is everybody good with it?
Yes.
All right, hold on. So I will make a motion to accept the plan for cease and correct 20.12.0210 Kenyon Street. And that the plan should also include or be amended to note reports. We should receive reports for 3 growing seasons, and that with a rate of 85% survivability in order to satisfy the cease and correct.
I think I heard a second from Commissioner Kraus.
Commissioner Kraus, I'll second that.
Okay, she did.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. Cease and correct 210301, 143 Ivy Street, also known as 143 North Ivy Street. Earth disturbance, drainage, vegetation removal within the upland review area. Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Since the last meeting, there has been an investigation with the soil scientist and an engineer, and I believe that the project engineer is present. So I can pull up the plan and I'll let him speak to what the proposal is. As soon as I get in the right. Just to remind everybody, what happened was a drainage pipe was installed under the access drive to the property and was causing some erosion on the outlet side. On the upland side, there's a wetland area, and the inland wetland concern was whether or not that drainage pipe was impacting the wetland area, and then also the fact that the activity occurred within the 100-foot review area. So can everyone see the site plan?
Yes.
Yes.
Looking real quick to see. Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Is Robert Sonicson on the call?
I am.
Okay. So one of the things that I noted during one of the rain events is that some of the water that seemed to be contributing to the issue was coming from Ivy Street. So they did place some sandbags along there's a broken bit of curb here. And I'm not sure how effective it has been because I've not really been back out to the site since then. But this is the plan that they have to solve any drainage issues from on-site sources. And I know that the town is looking to do some curb repair to help with any town drainage that might be adding to the problem. So,
would you like me to go over the plan?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay. Good evening. This is Rob Sonicson. I'm a registered professional engineer with Walden & Associates in Guilford. I work with a property management company, and I got a call while I was away with regard to the violation. When I came back, I had soil scientist Bob Russo, who we work with a lot, come out to flag the wetlands up gradient of the crossing. And I did a thorough inspection of the entire area of the wetlands, and I went up Ivy Street to the north side of Interstate 95 and looked at the drainage that was coming down. Ivy Street is a fairly steep street that actually pitches toward the east, toward this property. There's a curb line along most of the property line to keep the street drainage in Ivy Street, and it's supposed to carry it past the driveway to this site, past the driveway to the Subaru dealership, which is immediately to the south of this site, and bring it down to the intersection of Ivy Street, North Ivy Street, and Boston Post Road, where there's a state drainage system. What had happened over time was that there was a short circuit of the Ivy Street drainage in the area. They're now shown as having temporary sandbags. The northern edge of the driveway apron, there was a low area, and all of the street drainage from Ivy Street going way north of I-95 was coming down, running down the gutter line. You can see from up underneath the underpass and running down in what amounted to be a river and coming down the driveway, and it was overtopping the driveway, which was really the problem during the winter. And there was a serious icing problem, and the owner, in an effort to solve the icing problem and to get the water from flowing across the surface of the driveway, put in a culvert, and that led to the violation. So what we proposed, number one, is to try to come up with a way that the town drainage could stay on Ivy Street and carry it down the gutter line to the Boston Post Road, which is really where it's supposed to be. And in my professional opinion, that would solve the vast majority of the problem with the situation with the culvert. We looked at the wetlands, and the wetlands is really up gradient, and none of the water that was tended to flow into the area up gradient of the culvert tended to back up into the wetland area. Before the culvert was put in, there might have been some backup going up into that wetland area, but certainly with the culvert in place, that will no longer take place. The wetland is an isolated wetland. There's no drainage from I-95 that comes into it. It's simply in the area up to the highway embankment It's a depressed wetland. It holds water. Most of the water infiltrates into the ground over time. There's very little runoff. But what I did was I used the Connecticut Stormwater Manual to evaluate the amount of runoff which will come off of this wetland area and make its way to the culvert crossing. And I designed an infiltration system on the downstream side of the culvert, which will infiltrate the water into the groundwater and keep it from running across the surface and down the embankment into the catch basin, which is on the corner of the Subaru property. And the other thing that we're proposing to do is regrading the area down gradient of the culvert. There's some question about who it was, but there was some brush that was cut down in that area. It is on the applicant or the owners of 143 North Ivy Street's property, but they weren't aware that they had authorized that clearing to be done. But in any event, they're going to restabilize the area. There's a large tree that was cut down, but once the infiltration system is in, it will be easy enough to grade that area off, seed it with a conservation mix that I specified, which is a mixture of fescues and Kentucky bluegrass, which is a good low maintenance area. In any event, this yard area where their sign is will be mowed periodically. And I also included at the request of the town engineer an inspection and maintenance schedule. There is staff at the facility that does maintenance work, and they will be keeping a monitoring eye on what's going on with this system. So the design that we came up with will neither dewater the wetland, nor will it back up water to flood out the wetland. So the hydrology of that wetland system will continue to function in its natural manner. And I think that this plan meets the goal of stabilizing the area and the site. And I think that is it for the plan.
This is Commissioner Bassman, thank you. Is the plan including this property that we're looking at on the screen, is that in the hands of staff?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I'm not sure I follow the question.
Well, we talked about activity to be done at this particular location where is.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. The grade, mulch, and seed activities are shown on the site plan.
Correct.
One comment I would have is that there's some area that's been disturbed over here from the street drainage that's been coming in, so this area should also be reseeded and stabilized as well.
Agreed.
That's certainly makes sense. I was really focused on the downstream side, but there is gullying on the upstream side for where the street drainage came in, and the owner would, if once the street drainage stops, there's no reason that they can't stabilize that area. Until it does, there's no real way of stabilizing the area. But I understand that the town is looking to have some curbing work done, hopefully by the end of April.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Yeah, that's my understanding, either the end of April or May. I know that it's on their list of projects to do once they get the green light.
Hopefully the sandbags will keep it stable. They'll do a pretty good job in the short term, but that curb really does need to be extended in that area to keep the water running down the gutter.
Commissioner Rose, Mr. Sonickson, are you saying that the town resolving the drainage along the curb line all the way out to, I guess what it is, Route 1?
Yep.
That's part and parcel of making the culvert and the stabilization area work because you have to stop the inundation coming from the town road into the property. Is that true?
That's right, Eric. There's the amount of water that's coming off of North Ivy Street onto to the area where the inlet of this culvert is. There's really no way that this property owner could handle all of that street drainage coming onto their property. But with that street drainage taken care of, the system that we've designed is going to work very well, and everything will be stabilized, and there won't be any drainage flowing down into the corner of the Subaru parking lot where there's a catch basin.
Yeah, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. All of this water that you can see in this picture is coming from the street. So that will be very difficult to stabilize until that's resolved, which is why they've put some sandbags out there, which I think I may have a picture of. I'm showing these pictures. They're older. I just feel like with the rain, it shows the drainage issues that are occurring out on site.
I thought the video was great.
The sandbags that are located right there at the entrance to this driveway, and when those sandbags are in place, the drainage continues to run down Ivy.
There they are.
Sorry?
Yeah, there they are.
Okay.
That was where it was coming off the street and running down into the inlet area of the culvert. So hopefully that'll take care of it. At least it will significantly diminish the amount of water coming off of Ivy Street onto the property. Yeah, just as another note, and this is something that maybe I should talk with John about, but there's a culvert, a catch basin just on the north side of I-95 that was clearly being bypassed by that first big storm that we had. And I think it might be a good idea to take a look at that culvert to see if it needs to be cleaned out, also to stop the water, because that catch basin was designed to keep the gutter flow down to a minimum. Without it functioning properly, the gutter flow really, really increases, and it's actually, you'd certainly get wet walking through it. There was so much water coming down there.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I did pass that comment on to John, and he was out there the other day, so I'm sure he made note of other repairs that need to be made as well, or maintenance items.
This is Commissioner Rose. So Jamie, if I boil this down, the problem that the two property owners are dealing with is being caused by a failure of draining on town road. How do we go from here? Because it seems to me we're holding the two property owners responsible for a condition they can't accommodate. And so while everybody's relying on the town to fix it, we're holding the property owners responsible. How does that all shake out from here?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So the order was originally issued because of the drainage activity that occurred, which is in the upland review area, activity without a permit. And certainly there is some drainage that they're looking to do and have proposed the plan for implementing. So I think that the cease and correct order at this point gives the commission the tool to say whether or not they are satisfied that finishing that activity will satisfy any wetland impacts. The town drainage is not something that would be reasonable to ask the property owner to resolve. Their plan has addressed how they can manage that issue in the interim until the town can make that repair. So I think what they have proposed is reasonable with all of the different mechanisms in play regarding the drainage in the area.
This is Commissioner Rose again. You're saying what I'm saying, which is an issue of fairness. The property owners are, granted, this all started with a culvert that shouldn't have happened without a permit, yada, yada, yada. They have a plan to deal with that, so it ends up okay. But if I understand that the ultimately the source of the water that's really affecting the two properties is outside of their control, and what they're planning to do under the cease and correct won't work if the drainage isn't kept under control at the street. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Sonicson?
Yes, I think that's a very accurate description of what the situation is.
So,
Mr. Commissioner Bassman, but isn't our purview, but more narrow, and that is we had a violation. The violation is there's a plan to correct that violation, and at this point in time, are we sufficiently convinced that the plan will resolve the violation? Everything else notwithstanding.
If the plan, this is Commissioner Rose, if the plan includes the property owner continuing to maintain the sandbag barricade so that the road drainage stays where it's supposed to be, then yes, it's a burden on them. But in the absence of that burden, all the other work isn't going to last because the water's going to come streaming in. So it needs to be, they're going to need to maintain those sandbags at a minimum until the town gets their act together, is really the point I'm making, as unfair as that.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I agree, and that's why I asked for the sandbags to be added to the plan.
Got it. Thank you.
Or a comparative alternative proposed mechanism.
And the property owner is committed to, it's certainly in their best interest to maintain the sandbags for the length of time that they need to. But the real solution is to put in a little bit of 4 or 5 feet of bituminous curbing and whatever other work needs to be done to keep the gutter flow in the gutter and headed down to the corner where it gets into the storm drainage system where it's supposed to go.
This is Commissioner Bergman. I thought that last time we had concerns about where the culvert had been put in and whether that could possibly be draining the wetland. And I think, Jamie, you had said it was fairly high up, but I don't see any pictures. I don't know if we want to talk about that or if I haven't heard anything about that.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent.
Commissioner Rose, Mr. Sonicson did say that this was not creating a dewatering condition at the beginning of his presentation.
So particularly during this rain event, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, and seeing all of the drainage from the street coming in, there's a bit of a high spot right here at the edge of the wetland area, which you can see the pink flags marking the edge of the wetland. So there's definitely a high point between the wetland and where the pipe was installed. I'll let the engineer and or soil scientist, if he's present, speak to whether or not they have additional information to provide on that. But having the wetland area delineated definitely helped visualize that a little bit better.
There's no question that the wetland system naturally drains to the south. The grade, looking at the town GIS mapping and just looking at the contours out there, that system wants to flow south. It's running, in a parallel slope to North Ivy Street, which has kind of a steep slope running from the north to the south. There isn't a significant amount of flow that comes out of that area unless there would be a very significant rainstorm. And I looked at a 2.5-inch rainstorm, which is which is the most around a 1-year storm event which is the most serious annual storm event that you would expect to have. And in that situation, I determined how much water would flow out of that wetland system and want to go through the culvert. And that's how I designed the infiltration system. So all of the water that naturally wants to come out of that wetland system will still be able to come out of that wetland system. And by the same token, the culvert does not back up water that would cause additional flooding to change the hydrology in any way of that wetland system. So that system's going to be able to function the way that Mother Nature wants it to function, without any negative impact caused by the culvert going forward. Once the street drainage issue is taken care of, it will be resolved and stabilized. I think the problem will be solved.
Commissioner Bassman, Jamie, is it our intent to leave the season correct in place?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, I think it would be appropriate for the commission to leave the cease and correct in place until the site has been stabilized. I think that the action the commission's looking or should look to consider taking tonight is approving the plan so that they can get the work done to the extent possible until the town does their repair. So that way they can work on stabilizing and resolving this as soon as they can.
And I know I was just out at a different site that they manage, and they have asked contractors for bids to do this work in anticipation and hopefully having the Wetlands Commission approve the stabilization and the infiltration system.
Okay, so we're looking to entertain a motion to approve cease and correct 210301 as presented.
I second what you just said.
All right, Commissioner Bassman, this is a motion to approve the plan associated with cease and correct 210301, 143 Ivy Street, aka 143 North Ivy Street, to include an infiltration system and the continuation of maintaining the sandbags that are in place as of this date.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Good luck, guys.
Thank you all.
All right. Notice of violation, 41 Bourbon Drive, removal of trees within the inland wetland upland review area and within the wetland area without an inland wetland.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. For the commissioners that were on the site walk Saturday for 37 Bourbon Drive, it was noted that there were some trees recently cut down on the neighboring property, 41 Bourbon Drive. So on Monday, I issued a notice of violation to start a discussion with the property owner, make them aware that that's a regulated activity that requires approval from the Inland Wetlands Commission, and to advise them not to do any additional work, such as stump grinding or something like that, prior to talking with the commission. Douglas Bono contacted me yesterday after receiving the letter. He said he does not have an intent to remove the stumps at this time, and that he's willing to work with the commission. He didn't realize it was a violation or something that needed a permit. I sent with the notice of violation a copy of the site plan for the 37 Bourbon Drive application because it includes 41 Bourbon Drive and it shows the wetland location, and I thought that was important for a property owner to know. And on that plan, it does show the location of some of the trees that were removed. It looks like one of the trees was located within the wetland area. relatively no ground disturbance associated with the tree removal. So I have some pictures, and I also have the site plan, and and Douglas Bono is present to respond to any questions the commission may have and to discuss any activity that may need to occur in response to the activity that happened. It's my understanding that the trees were removed because they were in bad health, infested with bugs, and he was concerned that they were going to impact the house. So,
can you share those pictures, Jamie?
all right, Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. You're not looking at the photos, sorry, I'm looking at them. And the respondent to the notice of violation is on the call but does not have video, so I don't think you can see these pictures. He's on the call by phone. So this picture shows the blue flags here are the proposed rain garden on the neighboring property. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a stake here with a pink and blue flag. That's the wetland edge. And there's a tree here, here, and here that have been removed. And then I believe there were a couple that ultimately were on 37 Bourbon Drive that were removed because it sounds like the trees were removed before everything was staked out, and they were going based off of the monuments that were out in the field, which would have been the property boundaries before the lot line revision occurred. So in this picture, the pond is over here. Sorry, that is not rotated. So you can see that the ground disturbance is relatively minimal, particularly for the activity that occurred on 41 Bourbon Drive, but that there were some substantial shade trees that were removed from right adjacent to the wetland edge. Again, here's the wetland flag marker and the trees that were removed. So I told the respondent to the notice of violation that it was possible the commission would be looking to see some plantings to mitigate the activity that occurred. But at this point, I will hand it over to the commission to ask questions or turn it over to the property owner.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Does the property owner wish to address why the trees were removed and the number of trees that were removed and what his thinking is regarding mitigation? Is the property owner on the call?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. He is, but he's on mute.
Okay.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. This is Doug Bono. Yes, I took the trees down because there were bugs and a danger to the house of coming down, but I had no idea of the new property line. But
there were a number of trees taken down, correct?
yes, they were all in danger. They could take the house down. Yes, and the one on the corner was I have pictures. It was like it was halfway already headed to the ground. It was infested with bugs and everything, and it would have taken down the corner of the house, which is now the other property line, which I didn't know.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. How many trees were removed overall? There's the 3 down by the pond, and then
one in the corner of the house.
One in the corner of the house.
Yeah, were the 3 by the pond in danger to the house?
Oh yes, they were over 150 feet, overgrown. Half of the tops were broken off too. There's still some in the back that you can see that are broken off.
Just Commissioner Basserman, the 150 feet is what?
Well, that's maybe 5 or 6 stories.
Yeah, no, I understand what the, what, is it the distance between the tree and the house?
No, that's the height of the tree.
Height of the tree, okay.
So this is Commissioner Boda. Is there a, yeah, I think Jamie had alluded to earlier that we would be interested in a planting plan for remediation. Is that something that you're prepared with this evening, or
Jamie,
perhaps for next month?
Frederick in the
No, that's Doug Bono here. You know, that's fine. I could plant something over there. You know, that's I'm okay with that.
So you would bring a planting plan to the commission?
Would have to be a planting plan.
Yes, it would need to be a planting plan, and the when you're considering what to put there, we would be looking for native plantings, and we would also be looking to replace the function of 3 it sounds like very, very large trees. Obviously, you're not going to put 150-foot trees back, but those trees were likely providing quite a bit of shade, which would provide temperature attenuation for that little pond.
Yeah,
wetland.
those trees would have been dead in a couple of years.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what you would need to put into a plan, a planting plan, is trees that we're going to return that function back to that space. So shade and temperature attenuation for the wetland.
Okay.
Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. So this notice of violation was issued on Monday, and it sounds like it was received yesterday. So to have a planting plan for today would have been very challenging. Does the commission want to see and approve that planting plan, or is the commission okay with that being administratively reviewed? It is very close, and one of the trees, it does look like, based on the survey, was in the wetland area. It looks like these were the 3 trees down by the pond that were removed.
Commissioner Bassman, I think given the majority of the trees that were removed and the fact that at least one of them was in the wetland, I think it's appropriate, since we don't have a planning plan in front of us, to review that at the next meeting with the full commission.
Okay. Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent.
This is Doug Bono. Can I say something? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay. Yes. Now, if they put this house next door, which I don't think they will be, according to what I've been hearing, and how can I plant something now if this house goes up? Wouldn't it be wise to, I'm not against it, but I don't want to start planting now, and I don't know what kind of tractors are going to be coming back there. Well, they're putting in a rain garden in my backyard. How can I plant something now? But, I have no problem planting it, but I think I should wait a while.
So I think the area that I'm specifically concerned about is not so much near your house, but down those, looks like there were 3 significant trees down by the pond wetland.
I see. That's where you want the plantings.
Yeah.
Okay.
The stuff by the house is not of consequence.
Yeah. Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. In the notice of violation that I sent, there was a picture included. And I believe it shows the area that would be of concern.
Yeah, okay, I understand.
Yeah, so adjacent to the wetland edge is where the commission would be looking for the planting plan.
I understand. One thing I don't understand is that I have to plant. I took a few trees down, and now I got to plant a few more again. But next door, they're considering taking down the entire forest to put a house. It just seems very unusual. You know what I mean? I have to put up 3 because I took down 3 that were a danger to my house and my family. But next door, they're going to take down the entire forest to put up a house, and that's okay.
Mr. Bono, Mr. Bono, because
Yes.
there's a public hearing that's been ordered, we cannot have a conversation about the public hearing outside of the public hearing.
We don't have to have a conversation about it, but I do have a valid point, though. You know, I could express my opinion. I mean, if it's a hearing or not a hearing, you know.
Well, we can't take anything that you're saying about the property into consideration.
Okay, that's okay. I will plant the trees down by the pond. I thought you meant by the other part, the new property line. Okay, I see where you mean. So then I don't have to wait. You know, I have no problem with that, you know. I'll get some green.
Clear. No one wants you to plant anything. We want you to have somebody prepare a planting plan for you.
Yes, I was just going to say that. I'll have an arborist tell me, and then I'll show it to you guys.
There you go.
Thank you for your cooperation. See you at the next meeting.
All right, thank you.
Good night.
Good night. All right, moving into other business. Permit modification request for inland wetland 190704, 56 Stony Creek Road. Jamie?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. 56 Stony Creek Road is the nest. It's a daycare type facility that the commission's seen a couple of applications for in the past couple of years. They have some minor modifications to their site plan again, and I thought it might be appropriate to just consider it a modification of the 2019 permit rather than making them get another permit. They're looking to modify a little bit of their outdoor playscape areas. There's a section of the building that a bump out off the back of the building that was to be completely removed, and now they're only looking to remove part of it. What else? I'm pretty sure that somebody from the applicant team is present to go over it. And once I have the plan pulled up, I'm sure some of the other things will pop into my head. Some of the bigger concerns I had about just accepting as a agent modification to the permit was the fact that the activity is right up against the wetland edge. The wetland is currently maintained as lawn and is utilized for outdoor activities. But that being said, it's still very close to the wetland. So felt the need for it to come to the commission. I will pull up the site plans, and if anyone from the applicant team wants to chime in, by all means. So Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent, the most recent thing that, wait, am I sharing?
No.
Sorry. The most recent application that the commission received was for a septic repair, which has been approved. As part of that, they are looking to relocate their raised planting beds slightly closer to the wetland boundary. And then on the side of the building, they've got some play areas. I don't know if you guys can see that or if it's too small. So,
Maybe, do we know what the nature of the planting beds are? What material is going in there?
Jamie Frederick, and the wetland agent, I am not sure, but perhaps Lee Small knows.
Yep. Hi, everybody. I'm Lee Small. My wife and I own the daycare facility, the Nest at Shoreline Campus. The plantings, we do have a landscape plan done by Van Wilgens Landscaping. So the plantings are various trees and shrubs around the building. The plantings out by the actual stream bed were already done and approved, installed and approved per the last approval. So everything we're planning on doing now is actually back behind the wetland delineation lines.
And saying the nature of what was going into those planting areas has not changed.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, for clarification, Chairman Basserman, are you asking about the raised planting beds, or are you asking?
Yes, the ones that are close to the wetlands.
So, Lee Small, I think he's talking about the raised planting beds by the septic system.
Okay. Yes, those are raised planting beds that were set back closer to the road. There were 3 of them, just as there are now. They're planting beds built out of 2x12 on top of each other. We were just moving those out of the new approved septic repair area, and we just moved them, closer to away from the road.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, and to just recap for the commission, they're within the area of disturbance for the regrading for the septic system. So it's in an area that's already slated for disturbance.
And I think you're quite least small. I think your question was what goes in those. Those are vegetable gardens for the children to plant and learn about gardening.
Thank you. They will be fertilized?
No, we don't use any fertilization in those.
Thank you.
So Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, they are proposing a silt fence around the activity that is to occur. And they are looking to fence in the play areas that run adjacent to the wetland edge, and place a sandbox with a concrete sidewalk around it, another sidewalk coming from the building over to the wetland edge, which is right here, to access the play areas on the other side of the wetland.
Can I ask a question? This is Commissioner Kraus. The play areas on the other side of the wetlands already exist, correct?
Hi, Jamie.
Lee Small. The only one that we're going to be adding is this play structure up in the northwest corner, I believe it is. And that would be a play structure with a mulch bed up in the corner of the property. The wetland is.
I see all the kids out playing, and I just didn't know if all of those were still there.
Yeah, the swing set is here. The sandbox is here. We were going to add one up in the corner.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
These circles are some plantings. I believe they're river birch clumps of some sort. There is a planting plan which I can pull up to confirm what they are. But as I believe they're a native type planting. And then I believe in the back of the building is pretty much the same as far as the play areas and the fences around those play areas. And this is where the bump out is being modified slightly that I had mentioned earlier. There are also some minor modifications to the parking lot layout, but nothing significant and nothing that I think would be of impact to the wetland. I think the main areas of concern would be the fencing of the play areas right up to the edge of the wetland and the installation of the walkways and the associated play areas.
Commissioner Basserman, what's the nature of the fencing?
The fencing is just about a 2-foot high wood posts with a 5/4 by 6 on edge horizontally. We actually have one that was approved by the commission or by Jamie, and it now exists where this sand structure is going to be. So it's going to be a similar fence to what we already have there. So it is just a 4x4 wood post put in the ground.
Commissioner Basserman, again, the installation of the post for the fence would be how?
Would be by hand.
By hand.
No machines.
Okay. Jamie, I think as Commissioner Basserman, you started out with, reviewing this with the commission, but I don't know that I see any reason why this can't be an agent approval unless you tell me that somehow because it's a modification, the commission needs to act.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, because it's a modification, the commission can act, and I think because it was a commission permit and it is so close to wetland, it would be appropriate for the commission to make the decision. But because it's a modification, it's actionable tonight if the commission is satisfied with the information provided. And I know that the applicant is looking, or the permit holder is looking to move forward with planning and zoning as soon as he can. So I'm sure he'd appreciate it if the commission would be comfortable making a decision.
Commissioner Masterman, the plan looks reasonable to me.
I'm good.
This is Commissioner Kraus. If that was a motion, I would second it.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, before we go too far, I think it should be a motion.
Yeah. I make a motion, this is Commissioner Bassman, I make a motion that the permit modification request for inland wetland 190704 56 Stony Creek Road be approved, period.
I second it. Commissioner Kraus.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Good night. Next up, Mary Tisco Elementary School, 118 Damascus Road, a temporary tent.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So recently, building applications have been submitted for some temporary tents at various schools throughout town in response to COVID. In particular at 118 Damascus Road, also known as Tisco Elementary School. The outdoor tent is primarily looking to be used for outdoor lunches when the weather allows. The tent is located in a place where a wetland has historically been delineated back before the site was developed. Back in 2004, a neighboring property was developed, and it came to the commission's attention that some grading that did not comply with the approved site plan had occurred at some point. It was estimated that that activity had occurred in the 1990s. And there was some talk about having a remediation plan created, but nothing came of it. And there's been no discussion that I could find since 2004. So let me see. I'm going to start off by pulling up a GIS map to show you the location.
Amy, the non-compliant grading was done as part of the school construction on the school property?
It's not clear. I would, it seems probable, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, it seems probable, but there's no record of when it happened, just that it doesn't comply with what the approved site plan was. So the sticky point for me signing off on the tent is the fact that it's in this area that's never been resolved as to how it should be treated regarding wetland regulation. So,
Commissioner Bassman, have you at all discussed with them the fact that the tent, has to be here as opposed to somewhere else, or kitty cornered or whatever, to get it out of this demarcated area?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, the tent is already up, so I'm not sure that it makes sense to tell them to move it. Yeah. But so Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, if I've got my brain working, you should be able to see the GIS map. It shows a wetland approximate location of the wetland delineation from the site plan when the site got approved for development. And essentially, I did go out on site earlier this week, and also just looking at the grading that was approved and the grading that's out there, I don't believe that this area is wetland anymore, where the tent is located. But I have a hard time signing off on it as the inland wetland agent, knowing that it was delineated a wetland, and the commission hasn't really made a decision to not treat it as such. So the question is kind of, how does the commission want to proceed? one thought I've had is that could either do it based off of field inspection and or require an updated wetland delineation so that way we know where the wetlands are now and that they don't become impacted again. And then if it's outside of the wetland area as determined at this point, that it could then be signed off administratively. I have the building application here, which shows the approximate location of where the tent was to go. It's pretty much like right in this area here. And then I also have some pictures of where the tent is to help show you kind of what the situation looks like out there. So.
It's a pretty ugly tent.
The drawing is not the best. So,
Jamie, is the condition of the wetland, you say, no longer probably wetland soils because of the regrading?
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent, that's correct. Because of the grading activity that occurred, I do not believe that there are wetland soils there at this time anymore. In 2004, the previous inland wetland agent had taken some notes, and she also agreed that, or her assessment was that it was no longer wetlands in this area as well. However, I think, like I was saying, back in 2004, the commission had some discussion regarding seeking remediation. Now, 16 years later from that point, without any follow-up, and with that being, already an estimated of 20 years after the activity occurring, I'm not sure if the commission, I think it would be kind of sticky to try and look for remediation at this point.
I'm Commissioner Basser, I'm not heading down kind of the remediation role, but I guess the only thing that comes to my mind is on a town-owned property, we probably ought to have a good record of whether there's wetlands and where they are on the property or not. And to the extent that we think that something has changed, I guess we need to make an evaluation either through some informal means or a formal means. But I guess I don't like the fact that on town property we have a conflict.
This is Commissioner Rose. I certainly agree that, to the extent that we put private residents through all of this, it seems at the very least we should redelineate, prove that what was there isn't there, and we can all wonder whether it was ever there, but at least we redelineate it and then cross the next bridge when it comes.
Amy Frederick and the Wetland Agent, it was very clearly there before. The grading was significantly different. Now the grading is essentially a slope from the rear of the properties on Damascus down towards the parking lot area. And the original site plan had it kind of as a swale going down towards where Christopher Drive or Christopher Road is, which is where the school's actually off of. But it's certainly been like this for quite some time.
But as we discussed earlier in this virtual meeting, we have a property here now that we can resolve one way or the other as to whether there is, the presence of wetland soils. And I think we should take that action. I don't think we remove the tent or anything, but I think we need to get a proper designation of the soils on the property.
Okay, Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So the commission is okay with the tent staying where it is, and that a wetland delineation be done. And if the wetland is no longer where the tent is, I can sign off on it administratively, bring whatever the new wetland delineation is to the commission for review after it's been received, and for any comments or questions, kind of move forward that way.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
All right.
Any of the other commissioners have questions or comments or feel differently?
Commissioner Granholz, I'm fine with it.
Okay, I'll take silence as acceptance. Expert testimony, general review and discussion, resources available in meeting materials. This is regarding the use of expert testimony.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. I'm not going to lie, my brain's turning a bit to mush, but at the end of the last meeting, there was a question about whether or not you could question the credentials of an expert. And so to just kind of touch base on that, the commission can question that. They should question it on the record of the application and bring it to that expert's attention, so that way they have the ability to respond to whatever concerns you may have. And then that way, if maybe there's a concern as to whether or not they have the proper credentials and the commission says, no, we really need somebody with credentials X, they can then say, okay, well, can we continue this to the next meeting so that I can get that for you? Does the commission have any other questions on that? We did throw some just general information documents in the Dropbox. So if anyone has extra time on their hands and wants to look at them, they're all materials that I think are helpful on the topic. And if you have any questions further on the topic, you're more than welcome to call the Inland Wetland office and talk with either myself or Abby about the topic.
So I think, Mr. Basserman, it may be worth spending a couple of minutes to look at that, given the fact that we are embarking on a review using experts on one of the applications that we had tonight.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland agent. That is a good point.
This is Commissioner Rose. Just for clarity, and I assume we're talking about the issue that I raised. I wasn't literally questioning the qualifications of the expert. I was questioning whether, to be specific, when the question was asked, are you a civil engineer or such, the answer was, no, I'm a mechanical engineer. So I'm asking the broad question of, just commonsensically, I don't know why we're talking to a mechanical engineer about civil engineering issues. And so that it's kind of an abstract question that I was asking, which is, what's an expert?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland agent. I think that really depends on the application. And so if something like that comes up, I think it's a good point to take a pause and ask your fellow commissioners what their thoughts are on that, because it really depends on the scale of the project. Does it need to be something that's certified by an engineer, or is it something? I mean, I've seen engineers submit applications, I've seen above ground pool applications where an engineer was involved. Were they necessarily needed in that application? Probably not, but they certainly had some expertise they could lend to it. I think it really depends on the scope of what's being proposed and what's being reviewed. And, if there's an 8-foot high retaining wall, then certainly that becomes more relevant. And I think that it just is a matter of discussion, and that the commission should feel comfortable taking the time to consider that as part of the review process.
This is Commissioner Boda. I think just to build on that a little bit, I think, Commissioner Rose, to your question, I do think it is a valid thing to ask and to clarify. We have had in the past wetland scientists who start to get into the engineering, and that's an appropriate place to say, well, we got to stop, because this now you're out of your testimony is not going to have the same weight as an engineer in this moment. And so I do think that your question is an appropriate one. And in that case, we might have at that time said, like, well, how is it that as this particular kind of engineer, you're qualified? And maybe they have part of their coursework or certification that's not necessarily their the kind of engineer that they are has given them status as an expert. So it's fair, I think.
Okay.
Amy Frederick and the wetland agent. Absolutely. And that's, I mean, we'll put it on the agenda because it is an important topic to discuss. The commission is a fact-based commission. It makes a decision based off of expert testimony. So it's really important that the commission understands what's involved with that.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple aquatic pesticide permit notifications regarding DEEP. One is 28 Pine Tree Drive, which is a new application for a 3-year permit for aquatic pesticide application. And 164 Alps Road, I guess a 3-year permit as well. Other than the normal comment, which we hear from DEEP, and then Jamie, you raised the issue about whether we want to comment or not. We have typically not commented on these, correct?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Yeah, generally, unless the commissioner has a specific question regarding something, she does not comment, but we're noticed so that the commission can comment.
Does any commissioner wish to comment or ask questions?
No.
All right, moving on to agent approvals. Inland Wetland 210204, 5 Meadowood Road, 27-foot above ground pool.
This is an above ground pool. Asked the standard questions and approved it administratively. All the materials are in the Dropbox. If any commissioners have questions, feel free to let me know.
No regrading?
It was relatively flat where they were looking to put the pool, and they weren't going to do any grading greater than like 2 feet out from the edge of the pool.
Gotcha.
Which was one of the conditions of approval as well.
Okay, next up, BR Inland Wetland 210201, 747, 749 East Main Street, building addition and improvements to the Dan Cosgrove Animal Shelter. I think this was discussed last time, and this has already been approved at this point, Jamie?
Yeah, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. This was brought to the commission for receipt at the last meeting. The commission had a presentation from both Jim Preddy with Criscolo Engineering, who did the site plan, and the town engineer, John Hofferly, also provided some comment and review of the application at that meeting as well. And the commission was okay with staff approving it administratively.
And last up, Inland Wetland 210301, 32 Flat Rock Road, another above ground pool. Anything interesting on this one?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, similar process as the other above ground pool, grading not greater than plus 2 feet out from the edge of the pool. Pretty standard.
How close to the wetland?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I could pull it up and let you know.
Not close. Not close.
If I had to guess, it was probably about 40 to 50. So it's kind of close, but not
really. Yeah.
Not the closest.
And do you remember?
And all permits have the condition that no pool water should be discharged within 50 feet of a wetland. So I think at that point, I think it was greater than 50 feet, because whenever it's less than 50 feet, I really stress the conversation with the property owner regarding the 50 feet, because at that point, they have to make a point of putting the discharge point further away from the pool than the pool's located. Further away from the wetland than the pool's located. Sorry, I got my vaccine shot yesterday. I'm definitely getting really tired.
All right, item 7, correspondence and announcements. Go ahead. We received a notice that it's probably the shortest tenure that we've had of a commissioner. I guess she's moving, so she resigned.
I think that's our second commissioner after one meeting.
Then we have a cause meeting coming up in May.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. The cause meeting was this morning.
Right.
It was held remotely. It was good. It was very informative. They talked about the updates to the federal wetland regulation, in addition to some local projects that have occurred. So it was good.
For the commissioner's sake, it is one of the better get-togethers during the year. So if in future years you find yourself having some time available, it is a worthwhile session. Let's see, the Regulation Fee Revision Subcommittee. Last meeting was on March 18th. Minutes to be approved at the next subcommittee meeting, which is scheduled for April 29th.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, which is also our special meeting for the selection of the peer review. So for the subcommittee meeting, people, you get 2 meetings in one day.
Well, that's not so bad. That's still at 3 o'clock, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And finally, some CLEAR April work webinars. If you go on the CLEAR website, you can see the webinar schedule and the time and the registrations associated with those. Anything else?
That's all I have.
That's all we have.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
10:30, guys. Thank you for your participation and attention this evening. Good night.
Good night.
See ya.
Have a good night.
Good evening, everyone.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.